There's this big tower where, there's police and, they can see like everything that moves around. There's a big field in between like the highway or freeway, the road, and the actual detention center. So you can only get so close, and everything's just like boarded up. There's no windows. I mean, I cannot imagine how anybody would let children, right? And we're doing it, and people don't know. There's like, little babies and moms there. It's really horrible. I mean, just to paint you that picture.
Is it in any way different than it being incarcerated that you were able to tell, besides the fact that there are children there?
No, not at all. I mean, it's a prison, there's no, I mean, it's not colorful or anything. It doesn't look inviting at all. It's boarded up. There's cops just like patrolling, and there's like big buses coming in at different times of the day with people, like full of people, full of kids and women. It's not right.
It's something that we recently learned, Nikki and I, is that ICE's budget has a mandate from Congress that they detain 34,000 immigrants on a daily basis, which really sort of helps you to understand why so many people are going into those facilities, because they have to. Yeah. They're supposed to be detaining people and supposed to be bringing them there.
They're easy targets. Like, they're the easiest target right now.
Yeah,
I mean, I also don't think that, like a young kid should get incarcerated for like having pot in his or her car, right? Like, we could divest that money into facilities that can help, these kids like get their life together and not put them into jail.
I think one thing that's really important that the Dilley facility shows is that these prison corporations and their backers are willing to go to any extent to make profit off of our bodies and the bodies of people of color. And you brought up a really good point, Nikia, that it is just the same, and that private prisons have contributed on the criminal justice system, have contributed to the 500% increase in incarceration in the last 30 years. And so, we can talk about the Dilley facility and women and children as maybe, a really extreme outlier, but this is indicative of the ethic that they operate under, which is incarcerating people of color and incarcerating them in really subhuman conditions. We know that 40% of people caught up in the criminal justice system are African American, and we know that half, a full 50% of women who are incarcerated in the country are Black, and that prisons have contributed to the expansion of targeting specifically of Black youth under the drug wars, and that has grown. We know that people in private prisons are overwhelmingly people of color, much higher rates than in public prisons, and overwhelmingly young, because that's who the new targets are of this prison expansion. So we kind of see the industry expanding in many different ways when it comes to incarceration, and taking in all kinds of communities that are being damaged and hurt, and whose families are being impacted as a result. So I thank you for kind of throwing that question in there to, I feel like, bring it back to what we're talking about, which is that immigrant detention and mass incarceration are two sides of the same coin right here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe you have more, I don't know, I maybe extrapolated a lot based on your question, so maybe you have more to add.
No, to me, it was just really highlighting the fact that we're not detaining people, we're incarcerating them, and we're breaking apart families in order to do it. And these are people who haven't committed any crime, they're being incarcerated for who they are, which is a really horrible thing, obviously.
I never wanted to be the old guy that tells stories about when I was young, but when I was young, I can remember the police, chances are, if you got pulled over and you had drank too much, and they knew you because police were from the neighborhoods they patrolled, they would have you park your car and they would drive you home. And they would tell you, when you get up in the morning and you're sober, go get your car. If you got in trouble, if you shoplifted something as a kid, as a minor, chances are they would put you in the back of the police car and take you to your parents and tell them what you had done. There was a human connection back then that we're losing. Money, I think we'd all agree, money is driving the system. The reason ICE is instructed to produce those 34,000 detainees and make sure these beds are filled is because these companies have minimal bed guarantee clauses. In other words, if they don't fill 90% of those beds, they can sue the government. Money is driving everything now. Money is driving the incarceration system, the criminal justice system, detention. It's driving anything. And human connection has been lost in our country. So my question is, how do we change this as a nation? And I know people say, oh, well, we get Congress to change it. But I hate to say it. Congress, for the most part, has been bought and paid for by groups such as American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC. That is the face of evil in this country. People don't realize it. They have a campaign to where they try to control the state houses in every state. They're in Austin with politicians in their pocket. They're in every state capital with politicians in their pocket. They realize that they could control what happens in this country by controlling what happens in each state's capital. So money is running this thing. How, as a nation, do we change this?
Right? Yeah, those are the tough questions. So we definitely have to stick together. I think we are moving we're moving on the right path.
Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like we have a phone caller. Is that what you're saying, Mark? Go ahead. You're
Hello.
hello. You're live on air.
Great. I have a question, and there's waves of immigrants, undocumented kids coming across the border. What would you suggest? I'm not in favor of putting people in prison, but what would be the alternative? I mean, it's not hundreds, it's not thousands, it's tens of thousands coming across. What should we do with them?
Okay,
Karen?
I can answer your question. First of all, it's not tens of thousands. Immigration has been dramatically reduced because of how people are being handled in the U.S. Another thing would be we've had immigrants coming to this country forever. I think the thing that you're not really bringing up is that it's a race thing. Like, there's little brown kids coming into the country, and this country does not want them. Now, you have to look at foreign policy. Like, the U.S. has so much influence. It has established so many dictatorships. Like, the reason why there's gang violence in El Salvador and Honduras, where, these kids are coming from, is because we exported gang members. So I think as a nation, we have to take responsibility of what we are doing and how we are handling our foreign policy.
Yeah. I'm an educator, and I teach in a school where we have so many students that don't have parents. They come across the border without their mom or dad. I had to take a little bit of an exception that it seems like we're characterizing our country as totally heartless towards the kids. When the kids arrive at school, they're handed a laptop. They have loving teachers. They have social services. They're not rejected. Rather, they're accepted in our schools. And they have courses and classes where they can learn English. So, yeah, I know there's people out there that want to exploit and make money. Also, other people out there in parts of our government or people that work for it that are in fact supporting these kids and these people in the country, documented or not. Just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very valid, and I'm glad, you're educated. I think the reason why there's no respect for a lot of people of color and stuff is because there's a huge anti-intellectual movement in the U.S. So people are not really informed as to what is happening. It's easier to just complain about people coming in, especially if they look different from you, rather than like, really seeing what's happening and how our politicians are acting outside
Yeah.
and within the country. Let's be real.
Well,
I
regarding foreign policy, I'm not going to talk too much. In the 80s, our government butted into the civil wars in Central America, late 70s and 80s, when the Central American governments, Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, were trying to, the people rose up and were trying to take control of the governments, and we butted in and got in the way of all that. And so the oligarchs are back in power down there, and that's why the people there's the system. It's a broken economic systems down there. So I say bring them all. We're part of the problem down there.
I like you
Thanks for listening to me.
I think the caller made a good point when he said there are good people in this country. We bring these children in, we educate them. We're not wholesale across the board antagonistic to undocumented workers. But there are parts of our government that have figured out how to make money off of them, that are going after them. And our politicians are in line with them. They keep passing more draconian laws. Not only for undocumented workers, but for American citizens as well, so that they can keep these prisons full, because they figured out a way for private enterprise to make money off of people being behind bars. How do we change this as a nation? I guess that's too big a question. How do we, as activist organizations, change this? What do we do? What do you do, Amanda? What do you encourage people to do? This is a problem that our politicians don't want to deal with it because they're making money with the way things are. But we, as the people, have to do something. What do we do?
That's why, going back to what I was talking about in the beginning, we see that it's crucial to break this this three-legged stool of the prison corporations, the investors, and the politicians. As long as the money is flowing and the influence is flowing in those three circles, we're going to get the same kind of outcomes that we've been talking about and the same kind of impacts on Black and brown communities in this country. And so the campaign is designed to strategically break the economic and political power and links behind this industry and shift the debate nationally on private prisons. Fortunately, Corrections Corporation of America and GEO Group, the two biggest prison companies in the United States, they're publicly traded, right? So they have to produce investor reports. And they list in their investor reports that the major barrier to their stability is that the public has not yet fully accepted the idea of for-profit private incarceration. And that's us, right? That's the general population. We also know that there's dozens of events happening next week for the Week of Action on Prison Divestment. That's a week of action that targets the tax breaks that prisons are getting based on congressional rule. They had incorporated as real estate investments, so as real estate investment trusts. And through that tax designation, they're saving, or they're stealing from taxpayers $113 million a year. And so we'd like to get rid of those tax breaks. And just like, you all in the university, folks in Columbia University, folks at University of California, the city of Portland had a unanimous recommendation in February to divest from Wells Fargo because of their investments in prisons. So I would say that if we're sounding hopeless about the state of private incarceration and mass incarceration in general, that is absolutely not the case. What we're feeling is that there's a tidal wave movement of people who are ready and willing to do something about this, and that the majority of people in the country are on our side. And as far as the tax breaks, maybe I'll just mention to folks that there is a petition up with MoveOn.org. You can find it if you go to tinyurl, so that's tinyurl.com/no prison tax breaks. So tinyurl.com/no prison tax breaks. And so this is the national push to remove those tax breaks from private prisons. And, it's something that the general public, folks, men or women on the street, supports. And so I would say that's one of the strengths of this movement.
I would also say that if you're talking about what can you do, thinking small is a really big deal. For a normal protest, you would boycott, right? But you can't really boycott which prison you're going to go to. Be like, I would like to go to the public one instead. So in this case, requesting and trying to force divestment is one of the things that you're able to do. Like, we as students, we're like, what is the power that we have? How can we leverage our power as students in order to see what we can do about changing where the money is going in our university? And I mean, being able to speak to the university's values. It specifically says on their webpage that, they value the quality of life in Houston and the state of Texas, that they want to identify and respond to social, economic, and cultural challenges here. That's not being embodied in where they're putting their money. So literally putting your money where your mouth is and trying to leverage your membership in an organization in order to achieve that goal. So I feel like Divest UH is an example of something that we can do at a local level. Also demanding that your politicians be in line with your views, demanding that not just your president, but the people who are lower on the ballot, your mayor, people who are representing you in the Senate, in the state Senate, in the state House, make sure that they have this on their agenda, and let them know that you're going to withhold your vote or vote for the other team if that's not the case.
You've got some experience with working with legislators in Austin, I understand. And what is your feel for them? If we come up to them and we tell them, we want you to back off on some of these tax breaks and these things you're doing for these universities, and be aware of this and take legislative measures to kind of put the brakes on this, do you think that they would be willing to listen, knowing that Alex supports this situation?
So I think that states in the South are definitely unique in that there are a lot of places in the South where there are prisons where that's the entire economy for some of the locations here in the South. And so it's definitely a little bit harder, but what you do is politicians have a job, and that job is to serve their constituents. And if their constituents are loud enough, if you get a number of people together to say, hey, you won this last election by 800 votes. Well, me and my 400 friends are going to vote a different way. So you really you make them weigh what are the benefits and the consequences to listening to what you have to say, and really it has to be a power play that is that strong, because all of the furniture that's in the Texas Capitol, it's made by prison labor. I was on the corrections committee for this last legislative session, and it was the nicest committee that they've had in a while. They really focused on trying to prevent recidivism, but they weren't interested in trying to prevent people from coming into jail in the first place. That's not what they were doing. So it is. The prison industry definitely has its claws in the South, but you really have to get people educated. You have to work locally. You have to meet your neighbor. You have to invite folks on the very local level to come in and fight this fight with you. And you need to make it important and relevant to them, because it is. Even if you are as far away from the prison system as you can possibly be, unless you are directly invested in it and making that money, it's still totally relevant to you. That's money that's coming out of your pockets as a taxpayer. And honestly, even if you are invested in them, they're still taking more money out of our common pool of funds as taxpayers than you're going to be getting from your investment.
Thank you. Julia, I know since we've been doing this that you've talked. Well, you're probably like me, and I assume Nakia too. We talk to a lot of people about what we're doing. What is your general feel? And I know that you've recently made connections with a group of millennials that are organizing in Houston that may even be beyond, their student days. But what is the feel? What is the pulse? What is your feel for how millennials look at this and whether they're interested in getting involved? Because face it, in Houston, it looks like we're going to have the activist community in general involved in this to make this change happen. Unfortunately, this time of the year, a lot of students are, their heads are in the books. They're not interested in doing anything except passing their courses and going home. But what is your feel in the general millennial community about this issue?
Well, I did recently join Houston Millennials, which is a new group of millennials who are young professionals and who have started getting together, and a lot of them are very concerned with social justice issues. So I've found that in talking to them and in communicating with them through social media, most of them are very receptive to the issue of private prisons in general. They already kind of have a base knowledge of what the problems are, and then are open to learning about U of H's involvement in the private prison industry. I've found that when we ask them to sign a petition, they go ahead and sign it. They're curious to learn more. So it seems like the younger generation is more aware of the issues and more open to doing something about it.
Fantastic. I was going to ask you the same question, Karen. Even though I know you're also associated with this millennial organization that's coming up, but I'm also interested in the immigrant reform community because I work with some of them, and I know when I tell them about what's going on with private prisons in the University of Houston, their jaws drop. They did not know about this, and they seem to be very concerned. What's your feel?
Well, I am happy to say that the Black and Brown community, I feel, are making really good steps to working together in Houston, which makes me very happy. I am friends with some of the millennials who are heading this this movement of unifying Black Lives Matter and the United We Dream folks, and yeah, the millennials are also like really great people. We host mixers once a month where we, network with each other and sometimes, give each other like businesses and then pass out flyers about the events that we're having. And so we're hoping to help out more. Our goal as millennials is to help each other out and to build our community, to make people feel at home, because right now the city of Houston is changing, and so we have all these developers coming in and people of color are getting pushed out, and we can't afford the $1,000 now to live in the city when the city's like plagued with minimum wage jobs that pay no more than $10 an hour. But yes, I think things are heading in a very good direction. United We Dream wants to end 287G by this June. It's up to Sheriff Ron Hickman and the Commissioners Board to end this by June. They can easily do it, just say no. So yeah, and I think it's very possible. So
that's great. I believe that this is gonna be. I know what happened. I know what happened at Columbia, Amanda. With the students pushing this thing and really driving it. And I know what happened at UC. I've talked to Anthony several times with the African Black Coalition. But in Houston, I don't know. It seems like the paradigm here is a little bit different. I know at the University of Houston, it seems to be a lot of focus on getting your degree and not getting involved. But I will tell you something that shocked me when I was looking at the numbers. Only 51% of the people at the University of Houston can expect to graduate. 51%. So there's something going, recently, I don't know if you realize this, University of Houston stepped up to a tier 1 level. Nakia could probably talk more about that. So we think they're sensitive about how people perceive them, and that's what we're trying to work on. Would you like to talk about that, Nakia? Or
Do you want to speak on it?
I just wanted to point out something that Nakia and so we're students at the university, and U of H is actually the second most ethnically diverse major research university in the United States. So that's actually something to be really proud of, that we're at a university that has such ethnic diversity. It's very cool. You get to meet so many people from all different walks of life. But that's what makes their investment so unpalatable, that they're investing indirectly in private prisons that lock up black and brown, the black and brown community, people who are economically disadvantaged, and yet that's the very population that U of H is so proud to serve. And not only that, U of H is located in the 3rd Ward, which is, 80% of the residents in the 3rd Ward are of color. So that's something that we always want to bring up when we're talking about this issue.
It's true.
Good points.
I feel like the university is in an opportune place to be able to reach out to that community and help that community, but instead it's using its funds to further just really decimate the community by encouraging locking them up behind bars, which is really upsetting. But yes, the University of Houston did just recently become a Tier 1 university and is very, very proud of its new status, and is trying to project that information as far as it can possibly can, which I totally understand. I mean, like, Tier 1 is a really, really big accomplishment, but it also, I feel like, it's very cliche, but with great power comes with great responsibility. And so as a Tier 1 university, I really feel that we need to be looking at where our money is going. Like, that's a no-brainer. I feel like when you're dealing with millions and millions of dollars of money from either the students or the surrounding community that are being donated so that those funds can enrich the community, both of 3rd Ward, of Houston, of Texas as a whole, of the nation, then I feel like you really need to make sure that you are careful with where that money is going and putting it towards places that embody your values. So I feel like pressuring them at this point is really important because of that new Tier 1 status.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think they're vulnerable because of their vanity. That's what I'm really counting on helping us here. But what I'd like to ask you, Amanda, before we close, I know there's, I came across a list of about 4 other universities around the country that listed on in LASE's webpage that are also in the midst of campaigns. Could you speak to that for a couple of minutes, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, one of the things that we need to always be bringing to the table in these times is that we are in the middle of a moment that where Black Lives Matter has completely changed the dominant narrative around race in our country, and continues to grow, and where the 15 Now movement, and even going back to the Occupy movement, has changed the narrative around how we look at economic equity. Where we have coming out of Texas, you all are in such a strategic place because of the immigrant rights conversations coming out of Texas, the role of immigrants in our country, the deferred action for parental arrivals decision coming out of Texas, now being decided at the federal level, with some really important dates just next week. These are conversations that really get to the role and the heart of who is our country and who deserves the protection of the state, who deserves the benefits that the state has to offer. And I think that you all being located, like you said, in a university that is so proud of being ethnically diverse and in a community that's so ethnically diverse is just so strategically located to be able to be doing this work. Similar to the work that I mentioned coming out of Oakland, which is where the University of California Regents meet in downtown Oakland. The African Black Coalition, many students who are from Oakland, which is a rapidly gentrifying city, and who are part of the University of California, which is something like 4% Black, University of California at Berkeley. And, So what we see, I think, in all of the university divestment campaigns is that powerful students of color are reclaiming what should be what is ours.
I'm sorry, Amanda. We're about to.
These public institutions.
I'm sorry, Amanda. We're about to run out of time. I want to thank you for joining us via Skype.
Thank
and,
you.
And I know I speak probably for all of us. We look forward to talking to you more via email or over the phone. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Nakia and Julia and Karen for joining us tonight and having this conversation. I think Nakia hit the nail on the head when she said what we have to do is educate people. And that's what we're doing. Even if we aren't successful in this campaign, we will have opened some eyes and some minds to what is going on in this city and in this country. And with